Welcome back to the deep dive. Before we even touch today's material, and honestly, you are definitely going to want to hear every single second of this, I need you to do something for me right now.
Yeah, hit the button.
Exactly. Hit that like button and subscribe to the show. We are trying to pierce the algorithm here, you know?
Right.
The content we're covering today is, well, it's exactly the kind of stuff that gets buried or throttled by the powers that be. So help us out, help the truth get out, and lock in your subscription.
Absolutely. The algorithm loves a smooth, compliant ride. But today's topic, it is nothing but friction.
Yeah.
But it's necessary friction.
That is the understatement of the year. Today we are doing a comprehensive review of a truly explosive new ebook. It's called Children of the Void, Feminism's Atomizing Legacy by Sophie Marie Eve Riker.
It's a massive text.
It really is.
Yeah.
I read a lot of books for this show.
Yeah.
And usually they feel like books, but this one, it didn't feel like a polite academic suggestion.
Yeah, not at all.
It felt like someone grabbed me by the shoulders and shook me. It's ultra long, it's incisive, and it is absolutely fascinating.
And we need to be clear right off the bat about the framing here. The author doesn't present this as a nuanced debate on tax brackets.
Right?
Riker frames this explicitly as a red pill wake-up call.
Yeah, if you're a men's rights activist or you consider yourself part of the manosphere, if you're a red-pilled guy listening to this book is targeted directly at you.
Exactly. It's a manifesto for men who feel that profound dissonance in modern culture.
It's that feeling where you look around at the skyscrapers, the roads, the power grid.
The bridges.
Yeah, the bridges. You know men built this infrastructure. You know men keep the lights on. But the narrative you're fed 24/7 is that your very nature is toxic.
And the core argument Riker makes is that this dissonance isn't accidental. The book claims it's engineered.
She argues that everything we've been told about history, gender, and society is a lie designed to atomize the family unit and essentially subjugate men.
It's a heavy claim. We're talking about dismantling what the book calls the oppression narrative.
Right, exposing this unholy alliance between Marxism and feminism. And the book actually offers a roadmap for the counter-revolution.
And because this text is so dense, we are spanning legal theory, evolutionary psychology, history. We are only going to scratch the surface today.
You barely even scratch it.
Right. We are giving you the map, but you need to walk the territory.
So if this resonates with you, you need to go to Amazon Kindle or Google Playbooks right now.
Yep.
Search for Children of the Void and buy it. You need the full text to understand these arguments because we can't cover 1,000 pages in 20 minutes.
It really can't. Let's jump into the first major concept, though, because it completely flips the script on how we usually talk about gender history.
The Patriarchy Shield.
Right. We are taught from kindergarten that patriarchy is this evil system of oppression, a cage built by men to keep women down.
But Riker flips that entirely.
She does. The book introduces the buffer zone theory. It argues that civilization is, at its core, a fortress.
Okay.
Historically, the book claims men didn't function as the oppressors inside the fortress. They functioned as the outer wall.
They created a buffer zone.
Exactly. A buffer between the absolute chaos of nature saber-toothed tigers, invading armies, the elements, and the sanctuary of the home.
So the premise here is that men didn't oppress women. Men created a safe space so women could nurture the future without getting killed.
Precisely. The author says it's the difference between a cage and a fortress. You lock a cage to keep people in, you lock a fortress to keep the danger out.
That's a powerful distinction.
And the book uses this visceral image. It says feminists are basically taking a sledgehammer to the roof of the house during a hurricane.
Because they don't like the shadow the beams cast on the carpet.
Right. They don't realize the storm is still raging outside because the shield works so well they forgot the storm even existed.
Which leads directly into another concept that really stuck with me. The glass cellar.
Oh, yeah.
We hear endlessly about the glass ceiling. Why aren't there more female CEOs? Why aren't there more women on the board of directors?
But Riker asks, where is the demand for equality in the sewers?
Exactly. This is what the book calls the blood tax.
The statistics the author pulls are wild. 99% of dangerous, dirty, and deadly jobs are performed by men.
Deep sea welders, high voltage linemen.
Coal miners, roughnecks on oil rigs.
The book argues that men are treated as disposable cogs in a machine they built.
Riker's point is that feminists want the air-conditioned boardroom, but they aren't fighting to get into the trenches where the mortality rate is high.
It's selective outrage. The book frames it as a power grab for privilege without the corresponding responsibility or risk.
And the author claims that by dismantling this patriarchy shield, we aren't liberating women, we're just exposing everyone to the void of chaos.
But we have to ask, according to the text, how did we get here? How did we get to a point where protection is framed as oppression?
The book traces this back to a very specific historical pivot. Understanding the history of our institutions before they were captured is crucial to the author's point.
Right, before the capture by feminists and Marxists.
She calls it the unholy alliance, the merger of Marxism and feminism. And look, before anyone's eyes glaze over at the word Marxism, the book insists this isn't abstract theory.
It's the operating system of the modern world.
Exactly. The book dives into the history of cultural Marxism. Originally, classical Marxism was about class war, the proletariat versus the bourgeoisie.
Rich versus poor.
Right. But in the West, specifically in the mid-20th century, the working class was actually doing pretty well. They had unions, homes, cars.
They didn't want to revolt.
Exactly. Capitalism was actually working for them. So thinkers like Herbert Marcuse and the Frankfurt School realized the class war angle was failing.
They needed a new way to destabilize the system.
They needed a new proletariat. So, according to Riker, they pivoted to identity politics.
Instead of rich versus poor, it became men versus women.
They replaced class with gender and race. The book argues they realized they could weaponize grievances. And this is where she details the long march through the institutions.
They didn't try to win elections initially, they took over the universities.
Specifically, they created gender studies departments. Riker calls these departments landing craft for ideology.
I'm landing craft. Like they are establishing a beachhead to replace logic with grievance.
And once they captured the universities, they trained the lawyers, the HR directors, and the teachers. And then they went after the legal system.
Which brings us to what the book calls the Tribunal of Tears, Title IX.
Right. The book heavily critiques the 2011 Dear Colleague letter from the Obama administration.
It effectively mandated that colleges judge sexual misconduct cases not by the standards of criminal law, which is beyond a reasonable doubt, but by a preponderance of evidence.
And for those listening who aren't lawyers, preponderance of evidence basically means 50.01% certain.
It's a coin flip plus a feather.
It is. And often without proper due process or the right to cross-examine the accuser.
The example in the book that made my blood boil was the story of Grant Neal.
It's a terrifying case study.
So according to the book, Grant Neal was a nursing student, top of his class, bright future. He was expelled, his life ruined, and not because his girlfriend accused him of anything.
She actually said their intimacy was consensual. They were in a relationship.
He was expelled because a bystander, a third party, thought a kiss looked non-consensual.
That is the Tribunal of Tears in action. The book uses this to explain how the presumption of innocence has been severed.
The author calls presumption of innocence the golden thread of common law.
And it's been replaced by listen and believe. The argument is that in this system, feelings trump facts. If someone feels offended on someone else's behalf, you are guilty.
It's an inversion of justice. The book claims it's creating a hostile environment where young men are one accusation away from having their futures erased.
And it's not just the legal system. The book argues there is a war on biology itself.
Riker goes hard against the blank slate myth.
The idea that boys and girls are born exactly the same and are just socialized differently.
This is where the book brings in the tragic case of David Reimer, the John Jones case.
It's presented as the ultimate counter-argument to the idea that gender is merely a social construct.
For those who don't know the history the book covers here, this was a botched circumcision back in the 60s. A doctor named John Money convinced the parents to raise the boy David as a girl named Brenda.
They gave him hormones, surgery, everything. They tried to socialize him into being female.
And it failed catastrophically.
The book details how David, despite being raised as a girl from infancy, knew he was male. He gravitated toward male behaviors. He tore off dresses.
We fought.
He eventually transitioned back to living as a man, but the trauma of that experiment led to his suicide.
Riker uses this to argue that the hardware of masculinity cannot be socialized away. You can't program a boy to be a girl.
But the schools are trying, aren't they? The book talks about how normal boy behavior is now treated as a pathology.
Testosterone poisoning, they call it. The education system has become hostile to boys.
The book argues that risk-taking, roughhousing, that kinetic energy boys have, it's treated as a disorder. So you see a massive spike in Ritalin prescriptions.
We are drugging boys to make them sit still, turning them into compliant furniture, as the book says.
And the result, according to the author, is the boy strike. Men are fleeing universities.
Why would you pay tens of thousands of dollars to go to an institution that tells you you're the source of all evil, tries to medicate your personality away, and then sets up a tribunal of tears to expel you?
Exactly. The book says if the game is rigged, the only winning move is to stop playing.
But this withdrawal has consequences. And that leads us to the title of the book, Children of the Void.
We are talking about the impact of removing fathers from the home.
This is the atomization the author is warning about. When you break the family unit, you are left with isolated individuals, atoms floating in a void.
The stats cited in the book are staggering. 63% of youth suicides come from fatherless homes.
63%. That is a crisis-level number.
The book also claims 90% of homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes. Riker argues that the father is the bridge to the outside world.
The one who teaches risk, competition, and boundaries.
The mother provides the sanctuary. The father provides the map to the wilderness. When you remove that map, you get chaos. You get the prison pipeline.
But the author argues the system seems designed to remove the father. The book talks about the Disneyland dad.
That's the visitation trap. Fathers are reduced to weekend entertainers.
They lose their authority.
The mother holds the power, and the father just pays the bills and takes the kids to the movies every other Saturday. The book claims it strips men of their role as leaders.
Let's talk about the golden uterus fallacy.
Right.
That was a term I hadn't heard before. But the book uses it to address the legal inequality in reproduction.
It refers to the double standard regarding rights and responsibilities. The book points out that women have a safety net. They can surrender parental rights through abortion or adoption.
They have a choice right up until the end.
But men face strict liability. If a child is born, the man is financially on the hook, regardless of his consent to be a father, even if he was deceived.
Riker argues this feeds into the divorce industrial complex, a system where men are essentially enslaved by financial obligations while having no rights.
It's profound inequality. And the book argues that this isn't just bad for men, it's civilization ending.
That is the void. A society without fathers dies.
The book points to birth rates falling below replacement levels across the West. If men realize that marriage is a suicide pact, that they can lose their children and their assets on a whim, they stop marrying.
They stop having kids. And a civilization that doesn't reproduce has lost the will to live.
It's grim, but the book doesn't just leave us in the despair.
This is the part I really wanted to get to, the counter-revolution. Riker offers a roadmap. She says it's time to stop apologizing and start restoring order.
The solution presented isn't to complain on forums, it's to build. The book introduces monk mode.
Break down monk mode for us, based on the text.
It's a strategic withdrawal. The advice is for men to pull back from the dating market entirely for a set period. Stop chasing women. Stop using dating apps.
The book calls those apps digital slot machines.
Designed to give you intermittent dopamine hits while extracting your wealth and self-esteem.
Instead, the focus should be entirely on building resources, competence, and yourself.
And there is a very specific physical mandate in there too, the 400-pound deadlift.
The book is very specific about this. It argues that physicality is a form of resistance.
Lifting heavy iron is framed as a mental and physical shield. When you are physically strong, the shrieking of ideology affects you less.
You are grounded in reality. The bar weighs 400 pounds, whether you identify as strong or not.
It cuts through the nonsense. It's about becoming undeniable. This is all part of what the author calls the ghost protocol.
Delete the apps, block the news, which the book calls psychological warfare anyway, and read books published before 1960.
That's a key point. Read books from before the Long March corrupted the language. Reconnect with the minds that actually built Western civilization, not the ones trying to deconstruct it.
But what about relationships? If a guy does come out of monk mode, what does the book say the goal should be? Because it's clearly not equality in the modern sense.
No, Riker pushes for complementarity. The idea that men and women are not the same, but distinct and complementary parts of a whole.
She uses the ship analogy. The family is a hierarchy. The man is the captain. The woman is the executive officer.
The captain sets the course and takes responsibility for the safety of the ship.
It's not about tyranny. It's about responsibility. The executive officer has authority. She runs the day-to-day. But the captain bears the burden of the final decision.
The book argues that this structure worked for millennia because it aligns with our evolutionary biology, and rejecting it has led to the misery we see today.
It's about embracing the red pill reality. The book frames this as a war for the soul of culture. And reading it, you really feel that urgency. It's positioned as a weapon against gaslighting.
That is the perfect way to describe the author's intent. It's a tool to dismantle these arguments with logic, history, and evolutionary psychology.
When someone tries to tell you that masculinity is toxic, this book gives you the data to push back.
To say, no, masculinity is the only thing standing between you and the mud.
Civilization is the only thing separating us from the mud, and it was built by men. That line from the book gave me chills.
It's a powerful closing thought from the author. We have to stop apologizing for the strength that keeps the lights on.
Listen, we have covered a lot, but Children of the Void goes so much deeper.
It really does.
It covers the abortion pandemic, the Me Too witch hunts, the wage gap myth. We literally couldn't fit it all in. You need to get this book. Go to Amazon Kindle, go to Google Play Books, and buy Children of the Void, Feminism's Atomizing Legacy.
And if you want to stay plugged into this movement, you need to follow the author directly. Go to Substack and follow @ConradAnnRiker.
That's @ConradAnnRiker on Substack.
Join the community there. The book mentions that the manosphere is the last bastion of free speech, and that is where the conversation is happening.
Absolutely. Do not let this information sit idle. Like and subscribe to this channel right now if you haven't already. Help us push this deep dive out to more men who need to hear it.
The era of apology is over. It's time to reclaim the narrative.
But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We talked about men being treated as disposable cogs in the glass cellar, the guys in the trenches.
Right.
Well, what happens to the modern world when the men in that glass cellar actually decide to walk off the job completely? A general strike of the infrastructure builders, the power grid, the water, the roads. If the builders walk away, the void doesn't just claim the family, it claims everything.
Something to think about.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. Go buy the book on Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books, hit the gym, and we'll see you on the next one.